So I feel like at this point so Emanuel Swedenborg, GOAT, greatest of all time recorded spiritual experiences, in my humble opinion.
Yep.
There's an aspect and a slice of those experiences that we've covered some on this channel, but not a ton, which is his encounters with the spirits of aliens.
Yeah, he publishes a whole book about it. He comes out with 5 books in 1758, and the first one he writes is the one about other planets, but it's the last one he publishes, which is interesting.
Sitting on that thing.
It's right in there with Heaven and Hell, his most popular book. And my sense, I don't know. I don't know what it means that he put it last, but it was interesting that he wrote it first and then thought, well, I'll wait till I get some of these other things out and put that at the end of this line in 1758.
Yeah, so let's go to that book. And in the beginning of it, he says that, look, you got to learn about aliens sometime, because
Yeah,
when
you are going to learn about them.
Right. He would say they're like us, meaning like he called them all human.
Yes, he did.
He didn't say
alien or whatever. Yeah,
he talked about meeting the spirits of people who had lived off Earth. But these are people, they're humans, they might look a little different, but they're all considered humans. And when you get to the afterlife, this is how he puts it. In the other life, it is common knowledge that there are many planets with people on them, and consequently, spirits and angels from them.
Okay, so that's a crucial point right there, because just like he says about people on this planet, they, after they die, become spirits become angels, same deal. So that's a universe-wide phenomenon. That's not an our planet thing.
In the afterlife, it's not like, are there aliens, are there not? One time I thought I saw this thing when I was it's just like, oh yeah, there's Jerry, he's an alien. Susan, she's an alien.
You find out right away. I mean, it sounds like it's one of the first things that people find out. And I think there have been near-death experiences that say a similar thing. Isn't that true? That some people find out that there's life on other planets through their NDEs? Yeah. I think I've read that.
It goes on. If a love of truth, and therefore some useful reason, prompts people there to want to talk with spirits from other worlds, they are allowed to do so.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a parameter on it. You know, it's not just out of idle curiosity or something, but if there's a reason, you know, if you've got a serious question or something
maybe
like that.
We jumped the gun saying like Jerry's sitting, like, not you're all on the same couch. Well, okay, if we think about the way that one thing I like about, even when Swedenborg gets into this like crazy alien stuff, is that it follows the laws of the spiritual world as he's mapped them out. So in the spiritual world, people don't all live in one big clump. They're separated. Just like here, we got different countries.
Yep.
You got different municipalities, and even if you're going to talk about different planets, they're all separated because of geography. Things are farther away from each other. In the afterlife, there's no time and space.
That's right.
But people are separated into groupings.
Yes.
But it's based on the kind of mind you have.
That's right. As you might imagine, there are different cultures and different mindsets on different planets, just as back in the day when there wasn't so much travel from one continent to another here.
Yeah.
People on one continent would develop in quite a different way with different languages and different customs and so on than people on another, because they're just not interacting with each other.
Well,
and that carries over to a state of mind, which is where you are in the spiritual world. So yeah, they're largely in a different place.
And you don't have to just take our word for the fact that mental difference creates spiritual distance, creates distance. There's some kind of distance, because
right.
If I were to say, we look right now at people who think really differently. We say, oh, that person is far left, and this person is far right.
Yeah,
and
you couldn't get farther apart.
What we mean is they have very different values, very different beliefs. We talk about it as these people. It doesn't mean
they might live next door, but yeah, you're talking about their mindset.
Yeah, you'll have panels of people who are like, oh, this person's they're way far apart on the political spectrum. They're in the same room, but there's distance there. Yeah. So that same distance occurs in the minds of people. So you got your aliens in the afterlife, your humans from another planet, and they're there, but because they are different and raised in different places, they've got different minds, and so we've got these different setups here. This assures them that there is indeed a plurality of worlds, and informs them that humankind exists on not just one Earth, but countless planets. It teaches them also about the character and life of these people, and about their worship of God.
Yes, and this seems to be a really important point, and I think it's part of why he wrote Other Planets, was that, I'm not going to do justice to this, but there's something called the scandal of particularity, which was this challenge that some people made against Christianity of saying, well, Jesus was born on this planet and died so that people could be saved. What about other planets? Did Jesus get born on their planet, or different Jesus, or somebody else?
Yeah.
Or is it, and it was used actually as an argument against Christianity. Swedenborg kind of steers around that whole thing by saying, oh no, the resurrected Jesus is known on these other planets, and partly through that spread of information in the spiritual world, that everybody knows. Everybody also knows, people from other planets know the Jesus story, that he was born human here on this planet. And so that's a big part of why he wrote what he wrote, that the universe is much bigger than you think, but there's still one God. That doesn't undermine what I'm saying, kind of thing.
Is that why they were mad at Galileo?
I forget,
So, like, because I know
he was about whether the
sun
is at the
Earth.
center, and
Oh.
yeah, because they felt that it contradicted the Bible.
Okay.
It says the sun rises and sets, and so was he challenging scriptural truth? And
I'm just saying. I'll ask the Indigo Girls about it.
yeah, good.
So you have these different planets. If there's life on them, then does it change? Yeah, does it throw off this whole thing? Congress has a hearing. Is there aliens and stuff? How long, though, into all these investigations do you get until, like, oh yeah, did they worship God? Because the aliens worship God. That
Doesn't seem to be on that list of the things that they talk about.
That's front and center for Swedenborg.
Yeah.
And to him, it's like,
Right.
It's an aberration. It's bizarre for us to be a world of people who, many of whom, don't believe there is such a thing as God. That's kind of more an Earth thing. That it seems like the aliens he encountered are much more religious or spiritual.
Faithful or something.
Yeah.
And it's striking me all of a sudden that at the time that Swedenborg was alive, and for a century before or something like that, you had these East India companies. They started to do trade with China and the so-called Far East from a European standpoint. And a big question was, do they believe in God? And he had a number of travelogues in his library, and where they'd get into what do they wear, what do they eat, and what's their worship like. Because part of what it was a challenge about discovering China was that they had long believed that there were kind of two kinds of people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
You had Christians who were sophisticated, technological, learned, amazing, built these fascinating structures.
Yeah.
And then you had the savages who were just completely unimpressive. They had no technology, no written language, because they weren't Christian. Then they go to China. China's got fireworks. They've got printing. It's very sophisticated, out ahead of Europe in several different respects.
Yeah.
And they don't believe in the Christian God, and that was kind of shattering for a lot of people. So I never thought about it until now, but Swedenborg's talking about going to other planets, same sort of questions. What's their view of God, and what's their situation?
And really, when you get down into, and we're gonna, coming up, we're gonna read some of his specific encounters with these spirits. But always in his book, Other Planets, the main details he cares about is what is their belief about God? How do they worship God? What's their morality? What does their spiritual life consist of?
Yes, and also, we might as well sound strange while we're at it, but
let's go.
But what part in the human form do they play? Kind of in the whole
Okay.
human being, from mind to body, all these different people actually play a role.
Well, we're about to
And,
get to that.
okay,
That's good. Like that's coming right
As long
up.
as we're going weird, why not go all the way?
Actually, the idea that there's aliens is the least weird thing you're about to hear here.
Yeah, that's right.
But let's quick lay the groundwork. Actually, that was Other Planets 2 we just read. If you go back to Other Planets 1, this is Swedenborg telling people, here's why I came into this interesting position of getting to go talk to these spirits of extraterrestrials. Because I have had a longing to know whether there are other worlds, what they are like, and what their inhabitants are like, the Lord has granted me opportunities to talk and interact with spirits and angels from other planets. With some of them, I spent all day, with others a full week, and with still others months on end. I learned from them about the planets they came from and are close to now, meaning now that they're in spirit.
Oh, so as though which he does say, they still sort of hover around the planet that they came from.
Yeah, he's never...
Those are their peeps.
Swedenborg never says that he was able to like go see an actual planet in the physical world or talk to people who are alive. It was always he's talking to people in the afterlife.
That's right. And then they're attached to people on that planet, and they'll tell him how things were, but it's more of an exit interview at that point.
Yes, about the life, customs, and worship of the inhabitants of those planets, and various other noteworthy details about them. Since it has been granted to me to know such things in this way, I am in a position to offer descriptions based on things I myself have heard and seen. Okay.
Yeah, so he's kind of emphasizing to me there that this is not on the basis of imagination or something like he's not dreaming up something for a novel.
It's not theorizing.
Now he has to take their word for it or whatever, but he's told, these are spirits from this planet, and he has interactions with them, and he's writing down what they said.
And that was a hip thing to do in his day. We're into empiricism now. We're not relying on Aristotle and the old Thomas Aquinas and those guys.
That's right.
We're going out and we're observing.
We're going to look at it for ourselves and see whether it's really that way.
Do that thing where you accidentally laid out that thermometer and the different prism light things heated different parts of it differently. So now we learn that there's different wavelengths of light hold different temperatures. I think something like that happened. This is the era of that.
Yes. This is the era of people who spent their entire lives weighing themselves many, many times every day to see after they eat, are they a little heavier? That's where they came up with this idea of how much the soul weighs. It was a crazy time for people measuring everything because it was exciting. This was a new thing. Nobody knew how these things work. Studying air pressure, studying all these different kinds of things.
All right. Here's a contender for the most bizarre concept we're going to introduce to you today.
Oh, okay. Good.
This is Other Planets 5. The angelic heaven is as vast as it is in order to correspond to the details of the human body. And there are millions of details involved in each of its members, organs, and viscera, and in every condition it goes through.
And that millions is a kind of an understatement, I think.
Yeah.
Right? There's some things are in the billions and
okay.
Yeah.
I was going to should I read the next sentence or should we comment on it? Let me read the next sentence. We'll load ourselves all the way up. I have been given to understand that, seen in the light of these correspondences, heaven could not exist at all if it did not consist of people from a great many different planets. So enter the grand human, which is the idea that you and I sitting here, we're sitting inside the index of reality. If you want to look at the totality of the schematic of heaven, it's the human body.
You're wearing it. It's such an astonishing idea, but a great idea.
Because that's the form of God.
Yeah.
And so to make this heaven, there's a heaven, which is what the point of existence is. You're all supposed to end up in heaven. That's what God wants, because his intent in creating anything was to have people who end up so happy to be alive and joyful forever.
Right.
That's what heaven is. And the order of that, or the form that organizes that, is the human body. So you're going to have correspondence, which means just like you've got collarbone in the human body, it does what it does. I don't really know what it does. It makes it so you can anchor the muscles for your neck so your head can move. It does something for your shoulders. Whatever that role is, there's people who do that same thing for the human race. Like they anchor whatever the head means, whatever the shoulders mean for the whole human race together. They play that same role.
Yeah.
And if you have a body, it needs to have all the parts, and the parts all need to be functioning. So heaven needs to have people fulfilling all those roles.
And they're very, very different. I mean, it's astonishing how different the environments in which each organ functions are quite different. The needs that they have and so on, what they take from the bloodstream and what they do with it. It's not one kind of blob of uniform cells. As I understand it, and I don't understand it
I feel
very
like a
well.
blob of uniform cells sometimes now that I'm 40, but I digress.
That's right. They say that when the first sort of organ, first of all, you just had single cell organisms.
Yeah.
And then you had, and don't rely on me for, the history of evolution.
Here we go.
But
no fact checking in the comments.
But when they started to come together, they were all together, and then each little cell has its own mouth, its own digestive tract, its own, whatever, something that passes for a brain and all that. And so you get these tube sponges or things that are just sort of a series of cells in a row. And then it seems as though what happened over time was that somebody said, well, look, I'm really, frankly, I'm better at eating, you're better at digesting. How about you play this role, I'll play this role, and it gets more and more complex as you go up the scale. You get to the human level where you have this whole brain that doesn't even have senses, right?
Mm-mm.
It doesn't even have senses. It's entirely reliant on other organs to supply it with information about what's going on in the world around it.
If you just got a brain for Christmas, like, you need all these add-ons for it to be able to do anything.
I know. It doesn't do anything. Yeah, that's right.
So that's what it is to be a person. And we all know that. We're all walking around living that every day.
We're all wearing it.
But if you think of heaven, you might just think of, the heaven is just like, I don't know, it's just like a place. Heaven is just as complex.
Yeah.
And it needs to have all its parts
highly
working.
organized.
And what he's saying is that I talked about the collarbone, like, the collarbone. The collarbone consists of almost infinite things. There is like so many little bone marrow things going on there, and all you wouldn't believe it.
The outside of it's one way, and the inside's another way, and then it's got probably membranes or things around it. And
you zoom into any one of the cells in the bone marrow, that's got its little mitochondria and its little Golgi apparatus,
of organelles and stuff in there.
So, and that all those things are doing something there, and so you need in order to do that on the grand scale, you need a person who's there doing that. And
if you only had 8 people. Yeah. One person's having to, I feel worn out because I'm having to be the kidneys, the liver, and the spleen, because we don't have enough people.
And we don't have enough people on the entire earth, even though millions and millions of people are dying and going to the spiritual world all the time.
It's not nearly enough.
So Swedenborg is saying, you got all these planets out there with other parts of the human race on it. They're all coming into heaven as well, and they're forming different parts, and all together we're making this grand heaven, this grand human being. That's the point of existence.